Hello guys, I'm Lana. I must be one of the oldest people here to share her story. Well, I guess there is a first for everything. This story is being written by Riley. She was married to my grandson Joe. My late husband Matt and I raised Joe since he was a toddler. His parents passed away in a tragic car accident and we were the only ones to care for him. We were there to watch him grow and give him everything to succeed in life. We were with Joe every step of the way. When Joe showed up with Riley and told us that they had gotten married, Matt and I were a little shocked. We were hurt that they had eloped straight out of high school. Riley's parents had disowned her because of the wedding, so Joe brought her to our house. We took them both in and promised to help them out. Joe went to college while Riley stayed behind and took care of us. Eventually, Joe got a great job and started to achieve his goals. We were proud of him. But things were about to get bad. It was shortly after Joe joined a good job after working his way up in a cutthroat industry. He had landed a high-level job and was really starting to enjoy his life. Riley was super happy, and together they were even planning to have a child. But only a few months later, Riley arrived, crying on our doorstep. She was a mess and we didn't know what to do. When she came in, I said, "What is going on, Riley? You look horrible. Why are you crying so much?" "You need to tell us what happened, Riley. You're starting to scare us." "I don't know what to say, guys. Joe has left me. He's gone." "What are you talking about, Riley?" "I'm telling you the truth, Matt. Joe is gone, and so is his stuff. He left a note saying that he wants to divorce me and start a new life. He doesn't love me anymore." Riley went into a sobbing fit while Matt and I tried to wrap our heads around what we just heard. It was super bizarre, and we didn't know what to even think of it. It was true that Joe was growing a little distant from all of us. In fact, we were about to talk to him and try to know what was bothering him. But before we could do that, Riley arrived on our doorstep. Matt and I calmed Riley down and decided to talk to Joe separately. We immediately called him, praying to God that my grandson was just joking around. The moment he picked up, Matt nervously said, "Where are you, Joe? I just found your wife crying on our doorstep. She's saying that you have abandoned her. What's going on?" "Tell me that this is not true, Joe. Tell me that this is just a joke." "It's not a joke, guys. I've left her for good. Riley and I are done." I was shocked by what Joe said. Even Matt looked like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. We were really expecting Joe to laugh and say that this was all a joke, but he actually sounded serious when he said that he was indeed leaving Riley. I was confused beyond belief. We thought that they were happy. Joe had always said that he had married the love of his life. I was having a hard time imagining he would do this to her. I said, "You can't be serious, Joe. Riley is your wife. You can't just up and leave for no reason." "Oh, I haven't left without any reason, Grandma. I actually did tell her in vivid detail how I was no longer in love with her." "What? What happened, Joe? Why did your feelings suddenly change? You need to tell us everything so that we can understand better." "I can tell you, but I don't think you'll get it." "We will try to, Joe. We love you and we want to know what's wrong. We can't let you just abandon your wife without knowing the real reason. Tell us and let us think of a solution." "Look, I don't need your permission to do what I want. But if you're so interested in knowing the truth, I will tell you. The thing is, now that I have landed a great job, I can't have an average girl like Riley as my wife anymore." Matt and I were stunned into silence when Joe told us his reasons. We really were shocked to our core. In no universe did we think that our little grandson, Joe, would turn into such a vile and shallow person. We didn't teach him to abandon people just because he pleased, and we definitely didn't teach him to think the way he did. So his words made us both very angry. We said, "What is this nonsense, Joe? You are being downright mean and delusional. Riley is a great girl and you are insulting her." "I don't think you are thinking straight, Joe. This is not how a marriage works. Riley loves you and you love her. That's what is most important. Besides, Matt is right. Riley is a great girl and I don't think you can ask for better." "That is definitely not true. I want a better wife because I could have a better one. And guess what? I already found someone who's way better than Riley. My new girlfriend is more beautiful and successful than Riley. They're so far apart. They don't even compare. The conversation kept getting worse. With every sentence Joe said, Matt and I were getting angry. Joe was being extremely nonchalant and straight up admitted that he had an affair. Still, Matt and I knew that we had to find out more about what happened. Whatever we knew was enough to make us disgusted with Joe. But knowing the whole truth was important for us and for Riley. I said, "Are you telling us that you had an affair, Joe? And you were leaving Riley to be with your mistress? Is that what you were saying?" "If you want to call this an affair, then call it whatever you want. I don't care what name you give to our relationship. The fact is that I am in love with my new girlfriend, and she is everything to me now." "What about Riley, Joe? She was everything to you too. That's what you had told us when you asked for our help and blessing to get married." "I was young and stupid, Grandpa. I really should have waited for a while before settling for an average girl. Thank God I realized my mistake before having kids with her. I would have been stuck with her for life." "I don't believe this, Joe. You were being so nonchalant about this all. You made a big mistake and crossed a big boundary by cheating on your wife. You have disappointed us, Joe." "Well, I don't care. I'm happy with my new woman, so you should be happy about this too. She was the one who made me realize that I was wasting my time with an insignificant woman. She was right about that. She is so much better than Riley." Matt was getting very angry with Joe, and this was the last comment that drove him over the edge. He hated cheaters as much as I hated them. Joe was our grandson, all right, but he was behaving like an insane man. He expected us to just accept his new life and not hold him responsible for his actions. But we weren't willing to do what he wanted. Matt, in his anger, said, "No, absolutely not, Joe. We will not be happy about what you have done, and we will never accept your new life." "I have to agree with Matt here, Joe. From your words, it is clear that this woman knew you were a married man. So she wasn't in the dark about what she was doing. This is just plain wrong, and we will never accept a girl like that." "Very well, then. This makes things much better, actually. My new girlfriend doesn't want me to be so close to you guys. She thinks you try to control me, and I will never reach my full potential if I keep listening to you guys. Looks like she was right." I actually winced when Joe said that. The more he was talking, the further away I felt from him. I used to find the essence of my son in Joe, but the man who was talking to me on the phone didn't even feel like he was related to me. Joe was so influenced by his new girlfriend that he was ready to cut us off for it. He actually said those words out loud. He was telling us that he would choose this girl over someone who raised him. I had tears in my eyes from the sheer betrayal. I said in a shaky voice, "What? You will abandon us for this woman too? How can you even say that, Joe?" "I'm serious about this, Grandma. Lana has been right about everything. If you can't even be happy for me, you don't deserve to be in my life." "Is that a threat, Joe? If we don't forgive you for your nonsense and accept your wife, will you cut us off?" "Yes, I actually will do that. Since you want to take Riley's side so badly, let her be your grandchild instead of me. I'm done. We raised you for 20 years, and this is how you repay us. We did our best and sacrificed a lot to make sure you were taken care of. Now, we know that it was all in vain. You have turned into an absolute monster." Those were some of the last words Matt spoke to Joe. The conversation that followed this is not worth mentioning. There was a lot of back and forth, and Joe ended up calling us some awful things. I knew he was hurt that we didn't accept his choices right away, but what option did we have? We weren't going to blindly support Joe's decisions just because he is our grandson. He was behaving like a very cruel person, and he was putting this new girl above everyone else. He also showed no remorse for the wrongs he did. It absolutely broke our hearts. When Matt and I finally ended our conversation with Joe, we knew one thing. Joe was beyond help now. He was adamant about cutting us off if we didn't accept his new life. He was forcing us to do something that we didn't want to do. In the end, before we could even make a decision, our grandson cut us off for good. He blocked us everywhere, effectively cutting off our connection to him. Joe and Riley ended up getting a divorce after Joe didn't come back for a full year. Riley was a mess and relied on me and my husband for emotional support. We actually invited her into our house because she was a broken mess from what Joe did to her. Guys, Matt and I never regretted the decision about making Riley a part of our family. When our own grandson abandoned us, Riley was there for us. After she got back on her feet and became emotionally strong, she became our rock. Joe didn't even talk to us for 5 years, not a single word. We never reached out because it was never our decision to cut him off. Matt and I missed our grandson. I'm not going to lie about that. However, his betrayal cut deep and left us bleeding inside. My husband never got to see or talk to Joe again. He died before Joe reached us. When Matt passed away, I didn't know whether to invite Joe to the funeral. I was a broken mess and wanted my grandson there. It was Riley who convinced me to call him. She said, "Listen to me, Lana. I know you are missing your grandson. Go and call him. Tell him what happened and ask him to come to the funeral." "I don't know, Riley. I still haven't forgiven him for what he did." "It was a long time ago, Lana. It's okay if you don't want to forgive him, but I think you will always feel guilty and have regrets if you don't try once." "You think that inviting him to the funeral will be a good idea?" "I feel really unsure, Riley." "You and Matt raised Joe almost like your own child, Lana. I think as a parent you could give him this one chance to grieve someone who he loves. Joe loved you too. Maybe this time he will finally see how wrong he was to cut you off." Riley's words gave me some hope. She was right. I didn't want to regret not calling Joe to the funeral. Maybe he still loved us and would want to pay his respects to his grandpa for one last time. Even if he was too prideful to talk to us, it was my duty to reach out to him. Besides, Riley had moved on with a great man, and so I was ready to try and mend the bridges with Joe too. So I said to Riley, "Okay, Riley, I will invite Joe to the funeral, but he has blocked me everywhere and I don't have his contact anymore. I don't know how to reach him." "Don't worry, Lana. He had never blocked me from social media. I could reach out to him on your behalf. You can dictate the message and watch as I type it out and send it to him." "That sounds great, Riley. I hope you're right about this. I don't want to have any regrets in case Joe wants to pay his final respects to his grandfather." Riley excitedly sent the text that I dictated to her. I was starting to have some hope after Riley talked to me about possibly moving on from the incident. She didn't like that Joe boycotted us and we ended up losing our bond with him. Sometimes she felt guilty, although none of this was her fault. She never told us to not support Joe's decision, and she didn't tell Joe to block us or leave us. Anyway, despite what happened in the past and the fact that Joe never reached out again, I was ready to have some closure and maybe find in my heart to forgive him. My hopes were very short-lived. The first indication came when we found out that Joe had received the message and seen it. But he never graced us with a reply. We had provided him with all the details of the funeral, so we thought maybe he didn't need any more information, so he didn't text back. Riley and I still had a little hope that he would turn up at the funeral. I was willing to extend an olive branch just to see if he had changed a little. Believe me, guys, I really wanted Joe and me to have a relationship despite everything. I was looking forward to seeing him, but my hopes were in vain. The funeral came and went. It was a beautiful day with the sunniest weather, a day that Matt would have liked. The funeral service was also very emotional, but went well. Riley held me throughout the entire funeral. And Joe? He never showed up. I kept looking at the door, hoping that he would arrive any time soon. When I went home, the realization hit me in the face. Joe hadn't bothered to show up at Matt's funeral. I can't tell you how heartbroken I was, but it sealed my resolve about the little decision I had left to make in my life. A day after the funeral was the day when Matt's will would be read. Riley and I were patiently waiting for Matt's estate lawyer to come and tell us all the details, but the first person to walk through the door wasn't our lawyer, it was Joe. I was dumbfounded to see him nonchalantly walk into the house with complete disregard. I said, "What are you doing here, Joe?" "What do you think I'm doing here? I heard that you're supposed to read the will today." "What does it have to do with you?" "I'm your only grandson, in case you have forgotten. I've come to take my rightful inheritance from Grandpa." I was stunned at what Joe said to me. Riley was equally surprised to see Joe, and his words made her even more shocked. I wasn't even hurt anymore. I was literally fuming with rage. I looked Joe straight in the eye and said, "You have some nerve showing up after 5 years and straight up demanding money. You didn't even come to Matt's funeral. Did you even have an ounce of respect for your grandfather, Joe?" "Oh, stop the theatrics right now. There was no need for me to show up to the funeral. What would I have said anyway? It's not like I have come to re-establish anything. I've just come for my rightful inheritance." "What makes you think you are entitled to anything after you basically abandoned us for 5 years?" "I'm not here to entertain your stupid questions, Grandma. Just call the lawyer and tell him to be here soon. I don't have much time." Joe was acting so cold that it made my heart boil instead. I was absolutely furious at him and wanted to throw him out of my house instantly. But I didn't do that. No, I wasn't going to simply kick him out. I was going to teach him a good lesson. I picked up my phone and told our lawyer to come over immediately. He was already on his way and arrived within minutes. Joe didn't even bother to make small talk during this time, and he straight up ignored Riley. When the lawyer was finally in my house, Joe looked super excited. However, my lawyer was confused. He said, "Why is Joe here? This is a private will reading, so I don't think he can be here." "He thinks he's getting a huge inheritance from Matt's estate. Do you have any idea about this?" "What? That's ridiculous. I never called Joe for the reading. He doesn't need to be here at all." "What on earth are you saying? Of course I needed to be here. I'm the sole heir of Matt's estate. I know that already." "I don't know who told you that, but you are mistaken, Joe. You are not the sole heir of Matt's estate. In fact, you are not even mentioned in the will." "What? I don't believe a word you're saying. I'm definitely included in the will. I'm his grandson and his only heir. Why won't I be mentioned in the will?" While Joe was going mad with confusion, I was having the time of my life watching him stress. He deserved it for what he did to us. Then, when Joe acted all shocked, I decided to laugh. Joe looked at me and the lawyer with questions in his eyes. That's when I decided to serve some cold, hard revenge. I said, "Oh, Joe, you are a dense man. You want to know why you haven't been named in the will? Well, it was because Matt disinherited you." No, that's not possible. He wouldn't do that to me. I'm his blood. His only surviving heir. He would never disinherit me." "Do you think we believe in that old-fashioned stuff? Matt wanted to leave his inheritance to someone who would deserve it and not someone who simply had his blood." "No, this can't be happening. I am the rightful heir. How could he leave his estate to anyone else? If he disinherited me, who got my share of the inheritance?" "You really want to know who got your part of the inheritance? Well, Matt gave it to Riley." Joe and Riley were both surprised by what I said. They looked at my lawyer to confirm the news, and he simply nodded to say that I was right. It came as a shock to them, but not to me. I knew this all along. Matt and I had jointly decided on what to do with our will. It was both of our decisions to cut Joe off and give everything to Riley. Joe, however, couldn't accept this. He started to turn pale and said, "This has to be a joke. Why would he leave everything to Riley? This is not fair." "Then what is fair, Joe? Do you really think Matt would leave his hard-earned assets to a useless grandson who abandoned him and didn't even bother to show up at the funeral?" "I'm his blood. Matt wouldn't do that to me." "Oh, believe me, Joe, he was perfectly happy making this decision. If you think I'm tricking you, the lawyer will show you the will. That would solve your doubts." "How could you let him do this, Grandma?" "It was an easy decision, Joe. We raised you, but you only managed to stab us in the back and abandon us. You didn't reach out in a year. You didn't even let us make our own decisions about you. Riley was here for us, and she is the rightful heir to our estate. I won't be here for long, so you better remember this, Joe. I will also disinherit you and leave everything to Riley. You will never get another cent from me, and you will pay for abandoning us. I vividly remember what happened next. I went straight to the front door and opened it myself. I showed Joe the way out, effectively kicking him off my property. When he was gone, the will was read, and true to my word, Joe's inheritance was left to Riley. She was a crying mess and thanked us for being her family when her own blood turned their backs on her. I simply said that she did the same for me and Matt. Joe left that day but continued to try and contact me. He was desperate for reconciliation and even left his new wife because she had previously convinced him that we would give him everything if he just cut off. Suffice it to say, he is going through hell while I am preparing to watch Riley walk down the aisle to her happiness. I still miss Matt like crazy, but can't say I miss Joe at all. He chose to abandon us, and I have finally made my peace with it. I have Riley along with the beautiful memories of my husband and children, which are enough to last me this lifetime.